Welcome back to Just Keep Parenting, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. Last week we read a story called The Magical Yet. And I thought, you know what? We have some great books here that maybe I can share for the next couple of weeks on just some of my favorite books that we use when we teach children. I like to think that I used to use books when I had young nephews and nieces in my life. And now that they've all gotten older and they've all got children of their own, I don't use them as much. But we found some, I think, very good ones. And gosh, there's thousands and millions and billions of books in the world, right? But I'm going to share with you some of my favorites. Last week, the one that we talked about was The Magical Yet. And this week, we're talking about logo language. A lot of the kids have been frustrated because they can't read yet, right? And developmentally, most 4-year-olds shouldn't be able to read yet. We do have some that teach themselves. We have some whose parents have been a little bit nervous about it, so they've taught them how to read, right? But typically, no, that's not something that 4-year-olds typically do. So we've been talking about logo language and how they can read logos, or environmental print, some people call it. And so we've been reading books with just the stories and not the words. And then the kids have been drawing the pictures to their stories after the words have been written. And so it reminded me of this book that's called Ralph Tells a Story. It's by Abby Hanlon, and it's about a little boy who's learning how to write, right? So he goes on to say, "My teacher always said, stories are everywhere. And the kids in my class were always finding them. Then my mom ran so fast that she caught up with the ice cream truck. Yeah, stories. After that, I decided to hide my Halloween candy in my bed. But every day at writing time, I thought really hard. I stared at my paper. I stared at the ceiling. I could not write a story. Ah, I have no story," as everybody else is writing. I love this right here. This little guy, he's writing all the way to the end, right? Most of their body language is pretty happy, but not Ralph's. So I looked for other things to do. I went to the water fountain. Can I go to the bathroom? Again, his teacher says. Can I go help the lunch ladies? What? I tried everything. I roamed the hallways. Stories happen to those who tell them. Then one day, after getting sent back to my desk, I begged Daisy for help. I can't write a story because nothing happens to me. Are you kidding? She said. I've written a ton of stories about you. She began pulling her stories out of her desk. Look at this one, she said. Remember the time you let me brush your hair? And this one, remember the time you knocked down all the crayons? Oh, and remember the time you painted your nails with a black marker? I thought, oh, I'll never be a great writer like Daisy. Then Daisy stapled all her stories together. Click, click. Wow, she said, this book already has 13 pages. Click, click. Can I use a stapler? I asked. I was really good at stapling. But you have nothing to staple, said Daisy. You have to find a story first. Just look around, she said. So I started looking for stories out the window, in the aquarium, in my desk. She says, why do you have socks in your desks? He says. And when my teacher wasn't looking, I looked for stories on the floor. But still, no stories. Lying under my desk reminded me of lying in the grass at the park. I closed my eyes and imagined I was at the park. Just like that time a little inchworm crawled on my knee. The sun was shining right into my eyes. Squinting, I picked up this wiggly inchworm and looked at it close up. And that's when my teacher found me. What's your story about? She said. I opened my eyes. I saw an inchworm. Wonderful, she said. I can't wait to read what you wrote. But there was no inchworm story. I sat down and tried to write about the inchworm, but right away I got stuck. Do you know any inchworm stories? I asked Daisy. She just rolled her eyes and kept on writing. And then my teacher said, writers, come to the rug. Time to share. Ralph, why don't you go first? Said the teacher. Oh, I pretended that I'd lost my paper. It didn't work. Somebody said, he's sitting on it. I walked to the front of the rug, took me a long time. I held my paper against my chest so no one could see it. I was at the park, I said. An inchworm crawled on my knee. It was quiet. My heart went thump, 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 thump. That's when I looked at Daisy. Wow, really? Did it feel squishy, Ralphie? Did you take it home? And then everybody started asking me questions. Did your mom let you keep it? Did you touch it? Was it a baby? Was it a girl? Did it tickle? Did you name it? Wait a minute, I thought. Something did happen with that inchworm. Well, I picked up the inchworm and decided to name him Nick. First page. I built Nick a house, but he just inched away. Second page. So I followed him. Third. Which is why I didn't notice that someone was following me. Fourth page. And then all of a sudden, this wobbly, crazy baby grabbed Nick and put him in his fifth page. Diaper! I tried to be calm. Come on, baby, I said really nicely. Give Ralphie the inchworm. It didn't work. Was this the end of Nick? But then I noticed Nick was escaping. He crawled right up the baby's stomach. Quickly, I rescued Nick and ran, and we spent the rest of the afternoon doing nothing together. The end. Everyone clapped and cheered. Show the picture, Ralph, someone said. I wasn't embarrassed anymore, so I did. Name, Ralph. I was at the park. Me and the inchworm. That was last year. This year, I write stories all the time. I keep finding stories everywhere. 100 funny stories by Ralph. Writing tips. Number 1, get comfortable. Number 2, it's okay to ask for help. Number 3, you can always write about what you had for breakfast. And number 4, eat lots of chocolate. So there you have it. Ralph tells a story. Just think that so many of us think, yeah, we don't have anything to tell, but we all do, right? And so tell some stories to your children today. Maybe not read them, but tell them about when you were a kid. Tell them some of the favorite things you did in school. Tell them some of your favorite shenanigans that you did at home. Tell them about your favorite Halloween and why it was your favorite Halloween. Let's all tell some stories this week. Thanks everybody for joining. Pass this along and just keep parenting.